Let me see you shake that ass, 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 ass. Let me see you shake that ass, 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 ass. Ass, 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 ass. Let me see. Ass, 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 ass. Shake it, shake it, mama. Shake it for me. Get me busy with that ass, 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 ass. Work it good, work it the best. Ooh, let me know I get ass, 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 ass. I can make you shake if you want the beat too. I can make you nude. Ass, 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 ass. Slap in the real heart until it gets so red. Thing that vibrates is ass, 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 ass. Ooh, baby, let me get it. Let me get your breast in that ass, 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 ass. And when we do get it on, baby, you will know. Let me see. With me, baby, the rest will be just ass, 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 ass. Rock it, baby, rock it like you bad. 'Cause what you have is some ass, 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 ass. Don't get me wrong, I think you're top class. I'm just feeling that ass, 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 ass. Let me get you hype, and you won't regret. I can make you wet. Ass, 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 ass. Take it to the end, and we're all okay. This is for the big fat ass, 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 ass. Ooh, baby, let me get it. Let me get your breast in that ass, 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 ass. And when we do get it on, baby, you will know. Let me see. With me, baby, the rest will be just ass, 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 ass. Baby, let me get it. Let me get your breast in that ass, 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 ass. And when we do get it on, baby, you will know. Let me see. With me, baby, the rest will be just ass, 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 ass.
You better watch your back. Yo, you better watch your back. 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 Watch your back. You better watch watch your back. Yo, you better watch your back.
Hey, yo, Blue, Navo, y'all gonna have to turn them lights down, man. Turn the lights down. Y'all shining too much.
Nah, fam, we only getting started. Yeah, I got the light. He got the light. We got the light. What you know about it? So much light. More light than a spike in your power bill. Or a match when it strike, we devour ill. They don't know how to feel. Their minds crippled, mental gangbangers. Never saw losers, but we game changers. Rearrange strangers with the Rickens. Next mission, bring the light to your home, electrician. I've been grinding since the basement. If you know, you know, man, you not adjacent. I'm in a league of my own. My soul speaking through poems. Both your speakers are blown for my songs. Let's get it on. I'm ready for the challenge. The dichotomy of dark and light is all about balance. Life's never perfect. Beauty runs deeper than the surface. Album on sale, but the soul not for purchase. Birth this ill style.
I could see you and Kimberly dating. Except your family at first wouldn't like the fact you brought home some white boy. And then over time, you'd win them over with your charisma, and they'd realize you're down with the black ninja folk, as they call it. You're just that kind of guy, Say Jam.
Can make a smash from the mouth. I'm an all-star. Like this, like switch, like this, priceless. Like this, like switch, like this, priceless. Hit the light switch if you need a light switch. Like this, right quick for the night shift. I got the light, he got the light, we got the light switch. Sacrifice a ticket to the afterlife. My mission isn't done on earth. Alert the jerseys versus fuel my appetite. I have the right insight. World needs the facts of life.
That post is insane. Someone responded to them being like, I don't know if this is gonna leak through your think cage, but you gotta get your apartment checked for carbon monoxide poisoning, man. That is such a good fucking post. It's like, that's not even related to like the original tweet, right? Like that has nothing to do with what Sajam was. Sajam was talking about Kimberly, just playing Kimberly, but standing medium kick, and someone just goes talking about him and Kimberly getting like married. Awesome. My fucking stream deck gonna work now? Thank God. Was to put you in a picture? I can press it. He stopped working. I think Twitter broke him. The button doesn't do anything anymore. Like Naruto's wife? He's not a threat. Make sure to vote for Seth in the your favorite boss character thing, by the way. Dude, what is up with that poll anyways? Because we got Street Fighter V Sagat, Bison, we got Street Fighter V Gil, G, Street Fighter 4 Seth. Why? Do they hate non-binary people? Is that what it is? What's the angle? Just a little fucked up if you ask me. They hate me specifically? Yeah. So bullshit. I love Seth. I don't like the default Seth design though. Right? The Street Fighter 4 one. It's fine. I mean, I like it. It's cool. It's just, you know, we had a good thing going on with Street Fighter 5. Luckily, because of how the timeline works, Street Fighter 5 comes before 6, but after 4, I think. So we're pretty much guaranteed doll body Seth, unless Capcom are fucking stupid and don't realize it's the best design they've put out in like a 1 quintillion years. The hell? Pick up the game. There we go. Alright. You sound like you're mad. You're mad. You're so fucking mad. Get Will out of the voice call. That guy ain't fucking commentating. You guys gotta understand. This isn't like a everyone comes in and just chills thing. Get him the fuck out of there. Tell him. Tell him right now. He left. Okay. So Will listening? Oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about the sloppy. That was not.
What the hell?
It's just that's just what happens when I
Scared
join.
me.
Jump scare. Got your ass.
Now you need to make a commentator's role if you want specific people to commentate, you crazy head.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I just have the one role.
You just have the one role and you want...
Yeah, I'll fix that later. Get you in there?
Yeah.
You're like leaving in like 15 minutes. What are you gonna say?
They're like, hi, how are you?
Hi, how are ya?
That was mean.
You got
It
something?
was funny.
You got something? Well, what does that mean? You're not even. Are you even in the Discord?
I'm on in on commentating, I'm not in the Discord.
Like, what do you mean? You got something? You're not even here. Oh, you are. There you go.
Oh
You just
my
appeared.
god. That's a lie. You didn't see them.
I don't want to have like a bajillion people commentating, as funny as it would be.
We gotta get in guests every tournament. We have a guest commentator, you know what I mean? Like we got like I think Danny
yeah.
would be good because Danny knows a lot about information and all this other stuff.
I'm getting Sajam in next time.
we're
Sajam.
calling up Sajam. We got the plug, so
Sajam said he wanted me to have a little bit of walking around money. He funded it.
yeah. Sajam said he'd show up soon.
Yeah, so Sajam will be here soon.
I tried calling up Lord Knight, but Lord Knight's too busy getting the Persona 4 Arena Ultimax shorts. So
Yeah? Eleni?
Yeah, you an interesting creature, bro.
what the hell did they just say?
You're an interesting critter, bro.
Oh, and it's
I don't
just
even
weird.
think you like it like that, bro. I don't think you even want it like that. Like, I mean, it's good. It's like a special thing to me. I bring my family here. Like, it ain't even really that serious, man. I don't know.
That's serious.
Okay, I got the brackets set up. I need to set up
You got me fighting Hannah right away, bro.
set up the fucking lobby. Hold on, I'm behind. I'm behind. Create the room. Can't have my fight stick on my lap for too
See,
long.
I
Jeez.
cannot wait to get destroyed by Hannah instead of Danny this time. I got a new rival to make. I'm gonna be, you know that one character in every anime where like they get their ass whipped by everyone, but they're just like, I'm coming back. Don't worry about it. They come back and think the ass whipped again.
You're gonna be Baki. You're gonna be Baki.
I'm gonna be Baki.
Baki versus
But-
Yujiro
okay.
Hanma.
But the thing, okay, actually that's true because Baki he gets his ass whooped throughout the whole entire first part of the story, and then all of a sudden now he's just the G. He's just the best.
He's the GOAT.
He's the GOAT. That's gonna be me. Y'all think I'm washed right now, but later on I'm gonna be dry as hell.
I asked the dev of Score Bars to add something, and I think he did, but I don't think my version has it yet. I don't think he's like pushed it yet.
Mhm.
Because I mentioned that, like, hey, the player roster is a really cool idea. This thing go up on screen.
I'm gonna change my name to Pickle. That's me. I'm Pickle. I'm fucking.
I'm sure you are. You're scary.
Danny's playing Luke. Are you staying on Luke, Danny?
If that Diamond 1 Luke, it's over, dude.
See, it's Diamond 1, but that could just be that he just ranked Luke today. I don't know, bro. Okay.
Player
Whatever
roster
you
ain't
want.
pulling up, but. Anyways, I asked the dev if he could make it so that the roster would show up with their icons instead of their characters. I don't know if I can actually get it to pull it up. It'll fix itself.
I'm gonna play some of the goofiest Ken you've ever seen, because I forgot all my shit again.
Your challenger Lily gonna go crazy. Well, you know, Lainey, it's okay, because it doesn't matter if you have to work Sundays. Today's Saturday, so...
Hey, Sunday?
Dude, today's Sunday now, yeah? It just changed.
Fuck you.
Hey! What are you... Chill out with the hostility, bud!
My bad.
Hey, chillax!
Sorry, it was work.
It ain't serious like that.
Don't talk to me when I haven't my beer after work.
If you're doing too bad, you'll fraud back to Blanca. Who are you playing? Are you playing Rashid? Oh, you're Platinum 1 Rashid, okay.
Rashid.
Don't talk to me until I drink this water. Okay. First match. The seeding is good for every match other than me versus Will, but that's just how the seeding works.
How is my seeding good for Hannah? Almost won the last tournament.
Got
I
this.
got washed right away.
You got this, man.
I don't mind. Okay, that's the thing. Seeding me with anyone, I don't mind. I'm a commentator. It'll be a fun match either. So.
You sound like you don't mind. You sound
I
not
don't
pissed
mind.
right
I
now.
don't mind.
You're seething.
Here's the thing. No
You're
matter
gritting
what,
your
I'm getting my
teeth.
ass whooped. Yeah, I'm gritting my teeth. You hear my teeth fucking grinding against each other, turning into dust. My teeth about to look like the Buzz Lightyear teeth in Little Big Planet. They're about to be smooth after all this fucking grinding.
Alright.
Oh my god, you hear that shit?
What is happening?
Jury's on my road. Jury's trying to fucking beat my ass. That's a fight.
Alright. First match is gonna be Airy versus Blasphemous.
Get in there. Let me see it.
You get a Wendigo in your house?
That was not a Wendigo. That was a fucking bike. We got fellas on bikes riding up and down my road.
So, you're playing random, right?
Randomness.
Oh, you weren't even in the room. Alright.
I can only imagine how it sounds through my mic. It's probably crazy.
So
But
I
actually,
guess
one day I'm gonna put like a comedic like banana peel on my road, and that motherfucker's gonna fall off his bike. And I'm gonna laugh.
every time you play a set, I gotta wait to see what character it chooses so I can set your character correctly for the match history.
That's crazy. Can you not set as random as a character?
No, because each match history it shows what character they're playing in that match.
I'm gonna drink more of my drink.
Ken!
Alright, let's see this Rashid and Ken. Oh my god. spread
Oh my
out.
goodness!
Oh, drive reversal already. Gotcha. Nice corner carry. Oh my god. Was that even an EXDP?
No, it was just a regular heavy DP.
Damn.
Air to air.
Grab. Oh yeah. Motherfuckers in burnout. It's over. I'm saying right now. It's over.
I think DP on block should be +3.
You need to stop talking.
I just think that's fair. Potemkin's getting a plus on block reversal. Why can't Ken have one? Right?
Because Ken's not Potemkin, and Potemkin's Potemkin, right? Oh yeah, I told you it's over. They're in burnout 1.
Oh!
Never mind.
Oh!
Alright. Yeah, I told you it's over.
If that was +3, it wouldn't happen like that.
Yeah, Ken needs another bro. Oh, that Title 2 on the night shift? Bro, dude's, what's that fucking movie?
Oh my god, you went to burnout
Oh,
trying to get the wall splat.
The meaty fucking wall splat. They got it. Ken don't need no dry gauge.
That's true.
As long as you don't get hit, you don't have to worry. Don't be on the defensive.
Ken doesn't need anything, because he's Ken. He's Kana.
Yeah.
That
Hit that heavy
hard
dragon lash. Hit that heavy dragon lash. You want to see it. Oh my gosh.
Oh, is that gonna... You're not gonna jump that.
Oh my god.
Oh!
Oh my
Oh!
god.
Oh my
What
god.
was that?
First match goes to Airy. That was a really weird combo, but you picked it up.
You know, I bought the season pass, right? And I was like, I'm gonna practice Rashid before the tournament. I did not do that shit. Because I've been so busy this week. I got my job started. I had to do my eye stuff, and I should be free. So
Dude, I can't wait for your alarm to go off midstream. You'll be like,
it doesn't go off anymore. I just need to take it off before I go to bed now. So there's no alarm. You don't gotta worry. No jump scares.
Oh, whoa. Guile gameplay.
Oh my god. Guile time.
Perfect.
You got some perfects already, dude. SDI. Any boom loops? Can we get some boom loops?
I've been playing more Strive than I have Street Fighter 6 recently because I'm going to a tournament in person on Tuesday.
Strive is fun, man. That shit is awesome.
Yeah, but Potemkin doesn't have his plus on block reversal yet, so what's the point in playing it?
Yeah. Season 3 is looking really fun. Anyone who says it looks bad, they're no fun enjoy.
It looks like just like a bunch of really goofy ass changes. Whether the changes the game needs or not, I don't care. They look funny.
They look fun, and that's Guilty Gear to me. Guilty Gear is like, this dude got all this shit because it's cool and it's funny. Why not?
Yeah, because everybody's like, oh, play Xrd. They don't actually play Xrd.
They
No
don't
one
play
plays
Xrd, bro. No one plays that fucking game.
More
Everyone
people
says,
play.
I want it more.
Like, plus R than play Xrd at this point.
I agree with that.
Because at least plus R, like, I don't know. I don't want to get into arguments about this.
You don't hear plus R fans going, they did fucking crap, or XR Accent Core fans just be Accent Core fans.
Accent Core fans, the game is like different enough where it's like whatever, but Xrd and like Strive, I don't know, man.
They're close enough to where I'm like, I don't see the problem. I don't see the fucking problem, bro.
I'm the only Guilty Gear 2 fan, that's me.
I'm the only fucking
no God there, bro. Oh!
I'm the only Guilty Gear 2 Overture fan. Oh my god.
I don't know why he says no holding back, considering that to input that super, he has to hold back.
God, that's such a fucking lie. No, he doesn't, does he?
Yeah, he does.
Oh yeah, it's back, forward.
Back, forward. He has to hold back to do that super. Actually, I think the level 3 is down back. Well, I guess down, up, but...
Why?
How does he say that? Is he stupid?
What do you mean? Guy, why are you going out stupid? Bro? He might be a little bit of a troll, right?
He's an American.
Oh my god. He's not American?
Hey, yeah. What do you mean he's not American? His entire character is being American.
I thought he was Guile, though.
Well, yes, he's Guile, but he's American. Oh!
Oh my god, of course Guile wins. Guile fucking privilege, I guess.
Guile privilege. Guile is Japanese, he's a reverse chip. Yeah, he hits someone and he goes, hamburger!
Sukiyaki! I fucking love that character.
I was telling Lainey about how Chip just says a bunch of random Japanese words he doesn't know the meaning of whenever he does specials. It's so funny.
Does he still say surprise in fucking Strive?
I'm not sure.
That's my favorite one. Surprise! Oh my gosh! Come on, I'm with the Rashid. I want Rashid to win. I'll fucking just. You know what?
That's some bad news with that Rashid win.
Well, we keep going. It's best of 3, right? Or first to 3.
First to 3, yeah.
Yeah, first to 3. So we got match point for Blasphemous.
Oh, good reversal.
I think Eri can bring it back. I think
so too. Rashid is a weird character.
I think Eri doesn't have the matchup knowledge for Guile versus Rashid. Yeah, let's see. Come on. Oh my god. They did the Chun-Li jump up 5 billion times.
I will say that against Light Spinning Mixer, as soon as he does it once, it is your turn. Don't let him keep doing it. He can't actually loop it. It's fake. It feels real. It is not. You need to jab back your pressure immediately.
What's up with this Guile gameplay?
The Guile Maniac.
Guile heads.
Only Jello was here. Show us a real Guile.
What? Oh, Jello washed me, bro.
I think it might actually be over.
Do you? I still believe. Look at that, look at that.
What was that? DI'd the wrong way.
Because it's side switched, right?
Yeah.
They jumped forward, they DI, then jumped back. Did a little air jump. It's over. Or
Yeah,
not,
it's hard to play against because generally Guile's turtle. They're not this aggressive.
Yeah. Last one plays a crazy guy, the crazy head guy. See, when Guile gets his new skin, all you're gonna see is Guile. That's all you're gonna see.
Like all you see is JP.
Yeah, once everyone gets their other skins, they just won't ever add a skin to JP, and no one will ever play JP. Period.
Alright, I got some bad news for you.
I know, it's me next.
You against Tarana.
Alright.
Get in there!
I'm alright.
Oh, you right side advantage?
The fuck? Everyone else calls that disadvantage, especially in Tekken.
Well,
Right side edge.
I don't know. It could be advantage if you only learn
If
things
you
on the right
only
side.
learn things, but I don't.
Well, look, you got to start just learn everything from the right.
Well, I'm used to being on the right side anyways, though.
Why?
I don't know, and rank is always puts me there.
It's because it knows you're Puerto Rican.
What does that have to do with being Puerto Rican? You're
Because
distracting my
have
ass.
you seen this game's matchmaking?
Yeah, but I live in the U.S., not
And
in Puerto Rico.
it can sense. No, the
Oh
game
my
is censored.
goodness gracious,
You're
I
fucking
just got
lost,
fucking-
dude.
I did just my glasses, my bad.
Got your input list
Oh,
on.
and I got fucking. That's really good answer to the Dragon Lash, actually. I didn't think of that.
You gotta do OD Dragon Lash. That's
I
an
took
armor break
a swig of my
property.
drink. OD, what?
OD Dragon Lash. That's an armor break
Ooh.
property. I swear.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I'm not used to fighting a fucking geef that knows how to geef it up. I'm used to some
Real
shit-ass
Diva Maniac. If you get.
Oh yeah, god damn,
You
get a
got
Geef
anti-air
Maniac
DI,
on.
dude.
This is like playing fucking. I don't even know, man.
I hate to say it, but Pink Zangief reminds me of Travis McElroy. Don't say things like that. I don't
fucked
care
it up,
if
I
you're
fucked it
right. Oh my god.
Oh my goodness!
Jump it, dude. Jump it. Oh my
Just
God.
jump it. Just jump it. I'm fucking. Holy moly.
If level 3 should be jumpable on reaction, I think.
No,
Hold
I
up.
don't think so. I should stay like that. That's funny as fuck. We
It
get
is so
caught out by
funny.
that.
Dude, you see level 3
That's
come
my
out, you're
fault.
like,
That's my bad.
I should have known. I should have just
I should
reacted.
know. He has level 3. Like, what am I doing?
Why don't you use your level 3 on reaction like that?
Oh my god, counter hit. I'm fucking dead, bro. That's all my health. I just died. It's fucking match 4 right now.
It's match 4.
Yeah. You just can't see. Oh my god.
Oh my
That's,
God.
that's a game's fault. That's a game's fault. That's a game's fault. My bad.
Yeah?
That's a game's fault right there. That's a game's fault right there.
I'm watching your history, your input list here.
What the fucking balls was that?
Oh my
What
God.
did he just send to the air? That surprised me. I just got flabbergasted. My bad. I'm not bringing good vibes to Club Kuma right now. I'm feeling like a disgrace.
Logically, you would have to re-choose the character you were just using, yes, because only loser can
What
choose
the
characters.
fuck? Yeah, I need to stop in the button after that. I'm sorry, jump it.
Just take SPD.
Oh, you're right. Ooh, nice. Oh, I got fucking.
Ah,
I'm
Schmeedy.
learning it now. I'm getting there.
You got this, though. You're gonna free.
I'm gonna bring it back. Daigo's gonna enter my body and take over. And
The will to keep
speaking
losing, I mean winning.
You're gonna hear me like speaking Japanese and shit like that. And he's like, "What the fuck? Who is this guy?"
Sukiyaki! Oh shit! I have my random stage settings fucked up, so now it's lagging on stream. God damn it.
Oh no!
I'll fix that after this match. Low Fighter 6.
What Fighter 6?
Low Fighter 6.
Low Fighter 6? Bro, here's the thing. I'm losing right now, but I ain't been perfected. So that's all I care about.
That's true.
That's all I'm caring about right now. Oh fuck! I whiffed it. I whiffed it. I'm a fucking whiff head.
Oh yeah, I definitely see that on my screen.
See what? You're that behind? You're fucking lying. Oh, that was a good fucking. I'm getting perfect now. They fucking put on the glasses. They put on their glasses and perfected my ass. You're about to see it right now.
You whipped
I
that,
can already
bro,
see.
dude.
I can already see what Hannah did. Hannah had the sunglasses on. It looked like Johnny
Did you?
from Guilty Gear.
Did you just get perfected?
Yeah, I got perfected right
And I
now.
just
Saying,
said
at least
that
I'm
you
not
saw
getting-
you mentioned it and perfected
Bro,
you.
I knew it. I was doing it. I was like, this bitch definitely just hurt my ass, and that's what it was fucking. I cannot believe you would do that to me. That is disrespectful. I can't believe that.
It's over.
I need another damn drink after that.
Eddie has fallen.
Of course I've fallen. I have not played any 6 in a long ass time.
Yeah.
It's time for the fucking training arc. Y'all ain't gonna see me for a few days. I'm gonna be up in the mountains. Time for your first game though.
That is true. There is a truth to what you're saying. Alright, this is my first tournament match with my my brand new stick. Well, by that I mean
That is true. That is true. You gonna pull up some pictures? Has everyone seen it?
I will actually after this match. Can I turn on my hitbox
Yes.
display or is it fuck? There we go.
Bam, 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 bam. Dude, with your gladiator, man, you suck. Not bad, not bad. My bad. Right, you. Oh, I didn't realize you're already in burnout. Yeah, you're just getting cocked on now. It's over. Oh my fucking god. It's over. You're gone already. What happened?
Be quiet. Be quiet. Be quiet.
What the fuck?
Be quiet. You start commentating, bud.
I am. The round ended, and what happened? What happened? You parried that.
I should have parried that. My bad.
I'm right though. I'm just
You're
saying,
right. You're right. You're giving me
parry
the matchup
fireballs.
knowledge. You're giving me the matchup
Yeah,
knowledge.
just parry the fire. Oh, don't listen to me, Chumley. I'm fucking trying to. What the hell? Blame you. Oh my god. They're in the corner now. It's over. Bye all their drive gauge. Oh, the overhead. It's fucking over. The hit bind is gone. They just like me in this fucking matchup. I thought that whipped for a sec.
Ain't nothing with him.
Fucking.
I had to get the download real quick. I plugged it into the back of my
Yeah,
head.
I could tell. I was like, what the hell just happened that man? You're gone? What the hell?
Chun-Li explosion.
That title is Kites Enthusiast. What the frick?
Yeah, that's Chun's like first one.
Huh? Trying to walk up grab like Kyle. Oh my god, this is Kyle right here. Chun-Li is just Kyle. Let your kids. Nice. Very good. I guess they didn't expect the wall splat. Uh-oh. This is real bad. This gonna hurt. And Oki. Oh, but the DI. Up over the grabby. That overhead's so fucking good. Nice. DI'd. Does this kill though? Does this kill? Oh my.
Secret reset,
goodness
American
gracious.
reset.
What the fuck was that? Was an accident. What do you mean?
That was an
reset?
American reset.
That was an accident. You did not mean to do that.
American reset.
Fucking lie. I'm drinking my fucking alcohol. Right. This time I'm gonna hurt all the way to the fucking corner. And can't DI anymore. They're seeing it coming. But in fucking burnout now. Ooh, that was a good jump. Which corner's that in your burnout? Oh my fucking goodness gracious. Ouch.
Woo!
That's all it took was a reversal. This is Guilty Gear.
Level 2 reversal.
Yeah, level 2 reversal, my bad. Fucking Ramlet all over you. Did you just bait that out on purpose for the parry? Or was that an accident?
And if I did,
I feel like I don't fucking know. You're gonna say it was on purpose just because it sounds to me that way, so.
everything I do is on purpose.
Yeah, playing with safe buttons after a burnout. Don't want to get fucking chomped on. Holy moly.
Guns go into the crematorium.
The
I don't-
crematorium? What the fuck's a crematorium? About to get creamed? Like what?
I'm not the one who saw that.
What? Crematorium. Spinning bird, it's fucking gone. Almost a perfect. Why you gotta get these hard ass downloads? I think I need to update my download. Oh, just barely whipped that grib. These them long ass legs. You're like your ass is jury.
What the hell is this? Okay.
Nice fucking PI. Got you. Oh my god. One health. Oh! Fuck. Oh.
It don't combo like that.
What the hell? That's bullshit. Chun-Li need a buff. Chun-Li need a
Chun-Li needed
damn
a
buff.
Chun-Li needed a buff.
That was so gay. That should have comboed. Or maybe the timing was wrong on it.
I think it was the
That's why
timing was
combo?
wrong.
Okay.
I literally watched it happen and I'm like, oh, something's wrong, but I didn't.
Damn, Danny's down there in training mode with Luke.
Oh my god!
What the hell?
He's ready. He's ready.
He's getting the combos up.
Dude, this is
Who's
the first time
next,
playing
is it
Luke, believe
Danny?
it or not. Did the spirit of
Or is
meta
it-
enter him? Oh, is this training?
I think it's
I don't think this is gonna
nice.
work. I think you guys are just gonna go into training mode together. I don't think that's how that works.
Is it not? No, Danny gets a message. It's like, do you want to blah, 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 you know?
No, dude, you gotta go training mode together.
Oh, it'll tell Danny it's time.
You're matching EX. If I don't do kicks and EX, a super will not hit. Yes, I think level 2 only combos out of ODs and yeah, ODs.
Not gonna lie, my fight with Compression G is gonna be terrible because I suck at fighting Chun-Li.
I don't know what's happening over there. I can't.
Are we?
Yeah, well, I meant ODs and anything below ODs in the priority. So normals. Yeah. I guess anything
What the fuck
above?
is happening?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Cause I know level 1's only combo out of I don't know,
He
some
wanted
shit.
to train alone.
On the train alone.
No, it's time for his match now. Danny, it's time for your damn match. Don't be watching. He was watching some videos. He was looking at.
Dude, he was on
What
that
the
Sage Jam
best?
shit. He's a Sage Jam fan
He was
now.
watching Sage Jam Luke videos.
Yeah, might as well do your two next.
I'm just gonna do everything up until semifinals or whatever.
Oh
yeah, we gotta get losers set up.
Yeah,
Losers
I was
two
gonna
set
say
up,
I want to
yeah.
get losers set up and then run through losers.
Yeah.
Dalsim,
Dalsimi. Got the funny
the
ass.
Dalsimaniac, if you will.
Dalsimaniac. Here's the thing, Keith knows the Dalsim thing. That's the first kick I saw him play in this fucking game. He knows what he has. What is this shit?
Oh my god, what is happening?
What is Luke? What is Luke?
Oh my god, remove this goddamn character.
Dude,
Take him out of the
fucking-
game. I'm sick of
He
this.
saw that. I know Danny saw that fucking teleport coming. He doesn't know what to react to. Stand blast. Stand blast.
I get my fucking hitbox off the screen.
Oh,
my
my
God.
Why? How can Danny react that damn fast to DI? What?
The will to
Yes,
keep
that? What
winning
is
by
that?
Taco Umehara, dude. It's over.
That's what he's reading. He's in the lab reading it.
This one. Danny is
Like, Luke has
scary,
so much
dude.
sauce.
He's reading
Look
his
at this.
inputs.
Well, because now he's not playing Ryu. He's playing like an aggressive ass, like crazy projectile character. Like,
It's
look at
over,
this,
dude.
bro.
You can't
What
do
is
that.
this? See, you get Danny on the top tier and it's over.
Oh, never mind. It's over.
It's over. He got grabbed once. Fucking wash, Dad.
He's screen cheating. He's listening to Blasphemous' inputs. Oh my
Yeah.
god, that was some combo. It combos.
It combos, yeah.
We're all going
To
to
Memphis.
Memphis.
Feels good.
Oh, you
my
kinda-
god.
you kinda
saw
had
that
to.
shit coming. Is that just a target combo? That is.
Yes. Medium, 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 medium. You can't special cancel out of it
Boom.
though.
Divorce.
Boom. Divorced. I meant to
Did you
install
see
mods
Al-
for Luke. Damn it.
Did you see fucking the fact that Shinji is voiced by Alex Lee?
Yes.
I didn't fucking know that. That's so funny.
Who's it next? Who's it gonna be next? Guile.
Relay. But Danny probably has that download too, because one of his friends plays Relay, right? Oh my god.
I meant to change the stages. Oh my god. Whatever.
You keep forgetting. I wanted to remind you. Someone in chat reminded me. Oh, the
Oh
DI.
my god. Last second DI
That-
too.
That is one of the first time I've seen Danny just like actually pull out a DI without it being a reaction
Yeah.
like that again. Danny needs to work on his timing with his boom loops, but
Oh my god. My
Come on,
screen is
dude.
slowing down.
yeah, you're on the worst stage for it. No.
I don't understand
way.
why this stage in particular does this.
It's just got water, a snake.
Oh my bad. It's the snake. Snake is
monkeys,
so
a
big.
boat. Blanca's moving around. This is kind of crazy though. We're just not on the Dansters combos. He's learning while playing right now. He's evolving. I pity the fool who has to fight this motherfucker at the end. This motherfucker's like Tokita Oma in the hit anime and manga Kengan Ashura.
You're making
slash
that shit up,
Omega.
dude.
I'm not, bro. That shit goes so hard.
I assure you, Kengan Ashura is a real thing. Whatever you say.
Yeah, that is what he says. Luke looks like a character in fucking Kengan Omega right now. Looks like Koga.
Oh, that's it. That's round.
Yeah.
Boom, divorce.
Change the stage. Change the change right now.
I
Change
can't.
the
They're gonna rematch. They already must. Did they already rematch?
Not yet. Well, they're just waiting for the battle to begin.
Yeah, it's because they're already rematching.
Oh my gosh.
Don't worry, I'll fix it. I'll fix it afterwards.
Yeah, see, Hannah knows what's up. Fucking Seki Bayashi and
You're making this up.
I'm not. Seki Bayashi is such a cool ass motherfucker.
Hey, dude, Goofy Goober. Love that guy.
They do have a Disney character in there. It's like a delinquent that wears like a Mickey Mouse outfit, and then he takes it off, and he's just a delinquent with a pompadour. He might as well be the Goofy Goober. That's awesome. No wonder Hannah's so hyped to watch. Bro is just Seki Bayashi for real. Bomb, bomb. Oh my god, the short you can block. Why has Danny gotta be this good? What happened? Actually, I do know what happened. Dude's been playing fighting games. Fucking
Came out of the room and he's been playing fighting games.
Yeah, he's had a binky in his mouth, controller in his hand.
You should edit
Still
that
got
clip
that
from
right
the Street
now.
Fighter movie where Blanca's getting brainwashed with Nazi footage to be footage of people winning with Blanca Ball. The best part about that part in the movie is that they stopped brainwashing him with Nazi footage to start showing him videos of Martin Luther King Jr.
Stop.
And Blanca's like, dude, that's so cool. I hate racism now. Wait,
He used to like it? What do you mean by that?
well, he was being shown Nazi footage. He thought they were cool.
Whatever.
I'm not kidding.
That is so fucking crazy.
That's the
Luke
actual.
wins, bro. I couldn't even see what the fuck happened. Luke wins.
Okay,
Like,
hold
it was
on.
Danny.
I'm gonna
My
leave the
bad.
custom room. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna fix something really quick. and
Everyone,
then-
pause.
Pause.
Well, it's your match in Hannah next, anyways.
Alright, let me just fix something and then I'll be right. We'll be right back.
We get to see the real Sekibayashi go again.
Alright, there we go.
Let's go.
Oh, it's not my design. That's Bad Girl from No More Heroes. But thank you. I'm green now. I hate racism.
Also, yeah, Blasphemous. Fucking Danny's defense is crazy. You gotta play real. You gotta play real fighting games against that motherfucker. That's not fun.
It's not
We like
fun.
playing fake. We like playing fake fighting games, Randy. We like forcing our game plans on people. We like it when they hit buttons. Don't block.
Don't block.
No more blocking.
Gonna have to join my own lobby from someone else. Hold on.
Yeah.
Before I do that, though, let me fix my stages.
Are you all about to lab it up during these matches?
Random stage settings. Well, the ones I know for sure lag are Ranger's Hut, Bathurst Beach. Take out those. King Street is fine in my experience. Coliseum is fine.
You're saying all this and it's gonna be bad.
I hope
Bad.
it's not.
Boom, boom, boom.
Here, I'll keep in a couple extras, and then if these lag, well, that's all you can do.
Danny lab against. Oh, they already.
Oh shit, I'm queuing up for a casual match. Hold on. I don't want to do that.
What the hell?
Hey man, hold on. I just gotta run a set real quick. Do
Do I have any good Kengan videos? I don't have any. No one makes Kengan stuff because the anime is kind of new.
They don't make Kengan stuff because Kengan's kind of mid.
I'm gonna start ranking.
I'm just telling you,
Okay.
Baki better. Baki goated.
I don't know. I like all of them. I like Baki. I like Kengan. I like Hajime no Ippo. I like fucking Megalobok. I like when people punch each other with their big fists. See, the only reason Keith likes those anime is because they got men with their shirts off and they have big muscles and they're all sweaty. That's why Keith likes it.
That is true. That is so true. That
I
is so
hope Keith did not
bad.
just hear me. Keith is gonna like. He's gonna be that one picture of the gopher where he turns and looks at the camera. He's gonna join the stream and be like, "What the fuck did you just say, Eddie? What did you just say to me?"
What? Okay,
That's why I
I've been
played Dead or
meaning.
Alive.
I've been meaning to ask, what the hell is the deal with the gopher cheese stuff? I don't understand. What's the connection?
That this has been always Keith's thing since I've known him.
Gophers eating cheese?
Gophers eating cheese, any rodent, creature, like his name in one of our servers is just Jerboas, like the rat Jerboas. So I don't know what the cheese correlation is or anything. I think because he likes rats and he likes when rats eat the cheese. So we went to Gopher eats the cheese and he likes capybaras too. So you're getting hit with the jab. I'm playing real careful with these.
What a range!
Oh, you got hit with the same thing I did. I'm coming. Why would he say that? Why is he always coming? I have you. Yeah. Oh shoot. Playing the craziest footsies in my fucking life. Two characters I didn't expect to play fucking footsies. Oh my god. Y'all have been equal health the whole damn match. This is close as hell. But in burnout. Ooh, I'm fucking scared.
Ah!
Yup, just with the fucking kick, the medium kick. That medium kick crazy. We don't talk about that chapter, Nepo. Don't. We don't talk about that. That's old. Before I was born. Sweet dreams. Oh my god. Washed Issa more like. What the fuck? Hit with the super. Oh, it's over. Dead. Yeah. This is a close ass match. Very equal. Starting with a round start DP. The typical Marissa start. Monkey brain.
Strongest.
Testing the neutral with some kicks. Both lane really safe. Ooh, they try to get that perfect parry. That would have been scary. We would have been SPD'd there. Ooh. Ooh, with the grab! This combo's gonna hurt. Or not. Got the Oki though. Nice hold, got them in burnout. Ooh, very good super. Getting that health back down to equal. Got the combo too. Ooh! This is looking real fucking bad. Nice lariat, anti-air. Damn! Stupid ass chop. My bad, I didn't mean to say stupid.
I agree with what you said.
No,
I can't say it out.
I take it back. I take it back.
The woke news media can't know that I think that chop is stupid as hell, but
That chop is fucking awesome. Oh my god. The fucking it's sped up right when you do that crazy kick all the way to fucking oh my god. Let me grab. How's this? Oh, very nice DI. Into a grab, okay.
I did not go to a not lagging stage.
Oh, and then another grab. Is it lagging for you?
Yeah.
My bad, my bad. Oh my god. That range is fucking crazy. Let's see. Let's see this downward. This laggy downward. Ooh, very nice counter hit. Gonna get the corner carry. Punish counter Gladius. Trying to parry some of these. I see the game plan in here. Ooh, DI. Man, Marissa don't got a lot of DI safe stuff.
Nope.
Oh, and the EX. Oh my god, the armor punch. That armor punch. I forget he has it.
The armor punch is really good.
It is very good. They got me on my Dragon Lash. I was like, damn, that is very good against Dragon Lash. He's very good against a lot of things. Missed that fucking grab. What the hell? That is not very beefy. Bro, one of the chapters, Second Bayashi basically just does a fucking Zangief move. That shit was so badass. It was just like that. Not really though. I lied. Nice fucking lariat. Ooh! Wait, that was a really good punish actually. That was optimal as fuck. What do you do? Pretty ass neutral. Oh my fucking god, you're hacking. You're literally hacking.
I did I was just reading the inputs, I'm sorry.
Holy moly, I need a drink. That was really smart though. You haven't used that yet. Did not see that coming. Did this combo. Decent. Oh my god, again. Marissa the Grappler? Like Baki the Grappler?
Dude, are you fucking kidding me?
What the fuck? You're so lucky Hannah fucking like hit something.
No, I'm not lucky.
Oh. This is Hannah's starting to fucking bulldoze now. What the fuck?
My input didn't. Oh, well, I got lucky. I got so lucky on the pushback there.
You got lucky that whole match.
The game ate my input. You can look at the fucking hitbox indicator. I was doing Marissa when it didn't come out. It sucks.
That was so fucking unfortunate. What the hell? Big meaty phalanges? What are you talking about? Danny's able to play more safe now. You know, there's all this crazy shit. Or maybe it'll, oh, whip the grab again. Hannah keeps whipping grabs. Just barely, there it is, yeah. During the charge. Not falling for it. Oh my god, that was a good air SPD. Ooh, didn't grab that time. Getting Hannah scared with that little stance. It's over. I'm that lion back there. But y'all don't see that, my bad. Playing real safe, trying to not get in that range for grabs. God damn. Barely touching their tippy toes. Oh, with the grab again! This is gonna hurt. In the corner. Hannah taking her turn back. Ooh, try to call something out with the eye. Trying to whip punish. Ooh, and that's over. Perfect K. Oh, that was really good spacing. That was good ass spacing. Fuck good ass Tekken. I got a fucking combo going.
No, wait, huh? How does that work?
Oh my god, you landed on the ground. What you mean?
No. Not what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Not what I'm asking. You know what I'm asking.
No, I don't actually. What happened?
Oh, it's a safe jump. So how does that work?
Oh.
Is it actually safe if there's level 3?
Not that level 3. I guess not dang griefs.
Ah!
Oh my god. You fucking with
I'm scared! I'm so fucking scared, man! I don't like this!
Holy fuck. Oh, that was good.
I don't like this, man!
Oh, you just got fucking chopped. It's fucking over. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. I could have reacted.
Oh,
that
no.
that was totally winnable.
What a beautiful performance.
I really wish
So
the game
true.
wouldn't eat inputs all the time when you're trying to do reversals.
You need to calm down with your inputs. Keep
No,
just
dude,
texting
I can't calm down. They gotta come out.
You gotta calm down with your inputs.
You gotta calm the hell down. For a
You
while,
gotta calm the
what
hell
made you
down.
not scared? What the hell? But yeah, no, I fucked up. I spaced a lot. I did a lot better than I did last time. I don't know what
Wait.
the match was like last time, but I played a lot smarter because I was conscious of Donkey's strength.
You didn't
against Arisa.
update Blasphemous and Danny's fight to move them into semifinals.
Blasphemous says, "Folks, I have bad news. I made him better."
That's what I was saying. I was like, bro, this is just gonna make Danny learn full Luke.
He adapted to something I did, and now I can't.
This is what happened. This is just what happened. What are you doing if you're going into losers or what's going on?
Yeah, hold on. Let me report the matches.
Yeah,
I think
report the
Blasphemous and
matches.
Danny was 1-3. Was it 1-3 or was it 3-0? I don't remember.
I don't remember.
My match history would tell me. It was 3-0. That was 1-3. Okay. So, then we run back through losers. So, you versus Will.
Okay. So I was laughing at the clip Keith sent me. Alright, let's go. Didn't spectate. Keith just got fucked over on Valorant. Holy fucking moly. I'm ready to get my ass whipped. Let's go. I'm ready to continue my fucking crazy ass commentating.
Yeah, I mean,
After this match, I'm getting my drink.
what I had to do really in that matchup, and I did figure it out, was just kind of stay back, wait for you to whiff stuff, because I have a really good advancing whiff punish that gives me a full combo, my standing heavy punch. It's something that I use in neutral too much.
Ooh.
It's not a neutral move. I mean, it's good. It's not a neutral move. It's just a really good whiff punish. I'm just out of range. Oh! You're giving him the work.
That fucking with my input.
Oh my god.
Bro, I got monkeys behind me, bro. This is my fucking stage. They're just like me.
Dude, there are no monkeys on my stage.
There's monkeys on my stage.
I trust you.
That's all that matters. I fucking stopped my damn Glombo, man. This game fucking sucks. I'm going back to Strive.
Oh my god, your bombos suck.
I'm going back to my fucking favorite game ever made, Strive. Guilty Gear Strive by Daisuke Ishibatani. With music by Naoki and Daisuke.
You're making that shit up. None of that was real.
That was real. I'm whipping my reversals here. I'm actually ass cheeks.
Yeah, you're ass.
Someone take me back to the
Dude,
lab,
I used to
bro.
think you stink.
So, you cannot pull that quote on me. Do you want the picture or do you already got it?
Dude, of course I got the picture. Yeah, that makes sense. Shoryuken!
That's the wrong combo.
I'm sorry about this. I told Will about how good Chun's standing light is now. He's getting his mileage out of that standing light. Thanks. Well,
Oh, you can.
I mean,
oh,
it's-
you can.
It's because me and Eddie are like the kinds of people when we play fighting games that keep calling each other ass. And getting really pissed about each other's characters, even though you don't actually
Bro,
care.
you're so mad at me in Strive for
Dude,
no
because you have it
reason.
coming. You play those cheating, washed ass characters. That's all it is.
No, I do not.
You do. Dude, your name is Eddie, you know, like Zato, the busted ass character.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna play Zato, but he's so fucking hard. I can't remember.
Don't worry, they're making him easy. Little Tendies guy. He takes longer to come back. You have to play less with him. Oh, the cross out. Yeah, spinning bird kick is the kind of thing you gotta hit confirm.
That shit is so unsafe. Like, for what purpose?
Oh,
Why'd they do
oh!
that to her? Nice gribby, nice gribby. I respect the grib. Like that. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's why I like to see. I'm trying to burst right now. Like I'm fucking playing Strive. I'm not no burst head.
Get that new burst mechanic looks full screen. I can't tell if people who are saying that burst goes full screen now are just like misunderstanding.
They're misunderstanding. It's because I think because Happy Chaos's
It looks like you're reflecting the bullet.
yeah, you're not bursting full screen. You're just again, it's just the fact that the bullet is actually part of him.
Yeah.
See how Dhalsim's limbs are and stuff like that. It's a disjointed hitbox.
It would be awesome if the bullet just went full screen now.
I fucked up, man.
Dude, what?
How could
Bro! No! No! Oh!
I should have died there. I'm sorry.
You
bro.
really should have
I
died
should've fucking
there.
died there. That should have been it for me. My bad.
Hello, Juju.
Juju on that beat? Who is that?
That's my friend Juju.
What's up, bro?
I was
Remember
doing
back
the
in high
EX
school?
projectile. Yeah, dude.
Man, those are the days.
Stop!
I fucked it
Stop
up.
doing random. What is that? Okay, dude, come on. Oh, 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 oh.
Nice. Oh my god, I'm getting fucking put in the blender.
You gotta get out. XDP, overhead, overhead. Oh my god! Bro!
I don't give a fuck! I'm crazy! I'm crazy fucking Dave. You know what they called me in high school? I don't fucking know, they call me Eddie. Actually, no, they call me Boss Man.
You know what they called me in high school? They called me the Alpha. You should have level 3 confirmed.
I should've. I forgot I level 3.
I do it too.
That again, I'm not good at managing my meter. I'm not even that good. Actually, I'm better in Strive, but not in there.
Yeah, Strive doesn't have meter.
GG's. What do you mean? As every single super 50%.
Will desperately has to leave. He's begging us to let him leave, but Will, I'm sorry. Yeah. So when I used to go to Magic when I was a kid, like Magic the Gathering tournaments, they would have like a thing where they'd be like, "You get a bye. You go ahead in the bracket." You're getting a bye, dude. You're going ahead in the bracket. Eddie's out.
What the fuck? What are you talking about? I wasn't listening. What do you mean I'm out? What happened?
You're supposed to be at someone's house and you misjudged the time. Well, I'm
Oh no.
My bad.
Good luck. Get there. Be safe.
Well, make sure to show them the top 8 that you'll be on. Because there's only 7 people. Alright. So next match technically should be you versus Blasphemous based on the numbers. So I'm not doing that. I'm going to do mine next. You will exclude me anyways. Yeah, I'll make your character Blanca.
Alright.
Dude, my stick goes crazy. I gotta put that picture up on screen like I said I would.
Oh yeah, true. Ow! I didn't even get hurt. That was my fight stick. Whenever my fight stick gets hurt, I do too.
There it is.
I'm gonna go get my drink. I'll be back. Good luck commentating.
Alright. I don't need to be good luck commentating. I'm playing. Alright. That away. Alright, next match. Dude, me versus Airy. Now, I'm sorry. I don't know what the commentating here. I gotta focus, dude. Blanca, it's over! How do you mean good luck you're back?
Alright.
Oh my god.
I made it just in time. The Blinka.
Fight with all your heart.
You looking kind of hype. Fight with all your heart. Let's see it. Damn, this thing's crazy ass movie. Oh my god, you just got fucking Blanca balled. Guard side tweaking. Nice DI. And put them in front of. That was actually a really good DI there. Holy. I see Airy trying to implement the side switch into their game plan now, too. And the command grab. I can never get that command grab. Like, check it. I always just think it's a normal neutral jump or something.
Oh. That would be chip damage.
That was chip damage that got you?
Yeah.
Oh my god, a fucking command grab again. Damn, drive reversal. I feel like drive reversal is really powerful against Marissa. Oh my god, I thought we were doing something after that. I thought you could. You know, they based Blanca off of me at first.
I believe
when
that.
I was first born. It's not me anymore, but used to be. Damn! Did you mean to do that? Or is that whipped input? Oh my god, Blanca-chan.
Don't worry about me, bro. Worry about yourself.
I am. I'm the commentator, and I'm asking for your input. You're here.
Which part? Which part did I mean to do?
The super.
Yes.
Okay, I was just wondering, because I was like, that could be...
I didn't expect the neutral jump.
Yeah. All good.
I'm like, fuck
Oh
up,
my
but-
god. I think it's just really hard on you in general. With Blanca having all this shit. Oh my god.
I don't know this matchup at all, dude.
Yeah, I would say you don't know this matchup at all, and it's probably really difficult because Airy's just jumping around and able to just dodge your hits. Get crazy ass fun. I'd say play more safe. rise, kneel. Ooh, I saw the game plan.
I'm
That was
dead.
fucking...
Nothing I can do.
Yeah, I saw what you're trying to do there. I'm surprised you even with. Damn, Ares.
Why does that go so far?
Good. It goes mad far. Watch out! Oh my fucking god. What the heck? What was Ares been doing in the lab since last time they played Blanca? Holy moly. See ya! Yeah, come on, let's get it, let's get it. This is what I like to see, this is what I like to see. Boom! Fucking fist to the face, bro. No fucking way. Oh my god! Nah, you're just built different. That was fucking nasty.
Woo! Hey, thanks for rating me, Mo Bedlam.
With 7 people? That's crazy. Both the parries. Nice DI back!
Ah, fuck. My bad. I went for something that I knew would have been unsafe, but I wanted to really
You tried to
go
see if
all
you
in.
could get it. I mean, it's all about experimentation. That's what it's all about. Nice counter DI again. Aerie getting caught up. This is what happened last time Aerie fought you guys. I don't remember actually.
That was my only route to kill.
Yeah.
Marisa wins.
Damn. You're in the download now. What the fuck? See, once you get the full Danny download, it's over for Danny.
That is true.
But then Danny will get the fucking download on you next. It's an infinite fucking... I'm not gonna finish that. I don't know what to say. So
You're just saying shit. You're not even thinking.
I am just saying. I'm not thinking, bro. I'm like drinking and having a good time. So yeah, get that Blanca count out of you. Get the hell out of you. There it goes. Bye bye Blanca. You just got the download now. It's fucking over. That's not fair. Disable your downloader.
Oh, that.
Put your VPN in Egypt or something. Come on. I think Aerie can bring it back though. Aerie's about to download your ass now. It's fucking over.
Let's hope not.
Look at that backdash. Oh my god. Ooh. Playing it safe now. Calling you out with jabs. But this is gonna fucking hurt. Ooh, punish counter. Oh my god, you were... Yeah, it's over. Or not? Ooh, tried to fucking... I guess you can just jab that.
Yeah, you can just jab it.
Okay, damn. That's an easy way to deal with it then.
Yeah, I mean, if you can jab it on reaction, you're in a better spot than if... Well, actually, if you jump it, you can just punish him. So
Yeah.
it's kind of dependent.
Mm-hmm. Nice jab. Yeah. They're trying to play a bit safer, fade out some fun. What was... Oh my god, I didn't know he even had that.
Yes!
No fucking way! It was almost perfect though. Aerie wins. Oof, that was really good. That's EX though. That means I can grab gauge.
Did I miss a round or is it 1-1? It's 1-1, right?
Yeah, well, you have a 2-win streak right now. Should be 1-2, right? Or 2-1. Because you got 2 wins.
It's
in a row.
misses, but maybe. I don't like it over the suit, but I do like it. Oh, that's fine. I don't blame you. Oh, that was 3-1. I won. What? Oh shit.
Yeah, I know.
I missed the set. I missed the set. I just watched Aerie. I'm sorry. I didn't even know that just happened.
Aerie had it. I saw Aerie.
I just found out that I got the 3-1 download. I'm so sorry. I didn't. I was like, is it 1-1? What happened?
Yeah, I like Ares Blanca a lot.
No,
I
it's
think-
interesting. I'm learning a lot. There's a bunch of shit that's getting me. I just
Yeah.
don't know. You do not see Blanca.
Mm-mm. What is it next? Me and Blasphemous?
Let me do this up. Yes, next it would be you versus Blasphemous.
Blasphemous. What's up? Let's go. I'm ready to fucking lose. Or win, one or the other. It don't matter. It's fucking Guile, I fucking lose. Like, what? Why me? Why's it gotta be Grayley?
You've had it coming.
I did have it coming after that other match.
You know what you did.
I know what I did. I turned on my cheats. Woo.
Really good matches though, Ari. I had fun. Do you have a higher damage punish off of with DP?
With the DP, probably. I just don't know yet.
Okay.
It's probably it's those Dragon Lash that just said I was gonna practice, but I didn't because you know
Yeah.
I was gone.
Oh!
Ooh. Oh, why'd I do that? Why'd I do my target combo, bro? I'm such a fat ass. I gain 500 pounds every time I fucking do something wrong in this damn game. Oh
Yeah.
my god, there it is again.
It's like those Roblox games, you know?
It's like that. It's like fucking Oliver and fucking Baki, bro. It just turns into like a fucking big old mass of flesh. That happens to me too.
Like, no, the end of Akira. Tetsuo!
End of a key. Oh yeah. Oh my god.
I don't know why I said Akira.
Yeah, you should all be.
Dude. Oh! You're bringing it back! You're bringing it back!
Oh my god! I didn't do that time.
It looked like you were blocking too.
No, I wasn't. I kept trying to adjust my fight stick during that. Not during that part. I just fucking didn't block. That was my bad. My fight stick keeps sliding off my fucking big old thighs. Nice.
Ooh, nice. Ooh, good bait.
Nice.
Ooh! Ah! Yeah! Oh! Yeah, the worst shit ever is when you hit your whiff punish, but you can't actually do anything out of it.
I keep fucking doing that.
Ah! Ooh, nice! I don't know why Kyle just went, shut the fuck up.
In the heat. Drink more alcohol this time. Wait, I don't have my music on. I don't have my Kengan or Steel music on.
Well, that's why you're
I'm an Animal
losing.
Fighter. Oh, you grabbed me, bro? I didn't know Guy was a grappler. What the fuck happened to this character? What the fuck's up with this character?
Kyle the grappler.
Why'd that whiff, bro? This game is so ass. Scrubby ass game.
Eddie, I got some news.
What?
I used to think you stink.
Just bro, shut up, man. I'm playing Animal Fighter right now, man. Cause I don't want to use you anymore. I got Animal Fighter now. I'm gonna be playing Mad Aggressive. I say that on.
What? Who next?
What do you mean?
It was random.
Oh yeah, true. I'm finding
Before this starts.
anyone. Manon.
Now I know it's Manon. Take off Gambu Temple, take off. That one's fine. Up that.
Bro, I'm fighter. I'm drifter. I'm soldier. I'm killer. That goes through that? That's actually crazy. That's some crazy ass tech you got there.
Find out what just happened in a minute here. Oh, that goes through that? That's crazy.
You're behind?
Yeah, no, it's good now. I didn't even see it because it sped up past it.
What the ball sack? I side switched like I was playing fucking Dry, bro.
I think it's Ken, you don't want to break the wall. I think it's
Oh, I don't have my damn DI. They're gonna have 4 medals.
it's over, dude. I'm sorry.
But no one can break me down.
Ain't nothing gonna break my strive.
Number 1. Oh, I can't DI to that. Ooh,
Yeah,
okay,
that's the
that goes
thing
far.
about special
Far,
neutral
far.
pokes. Oh, if on a whip punish, medium punch, you can do 2 of them.
Oh, I got tried to DI, but I didn't. Fuck.
You gotta like.
I'm fighting anyone. Bam. Sit down and shut up. I'm soldier. I'm killer.
Oh. I can open a bag of sun chips and eat them really loudly on screen.
Ooh, nice. It's gonna hurt. These are 5 medals.
Yeah?
Ooh, nice. No one can bring me down. Ooh, nice. I got the hit grab. Oh. I fucking tried to do that.
You really
I'm
should have
dead.
punished
Gone.
that hit grab.
Yeah, I could have. I keep getting their hit grabs.
Yeah, that's at the mix-up too.
I keep that jump. I'm not used to that.
Yeah, lower.
Ooh, nice.
A lot of the pros who started playing Lillian have stopped playing her. Because
Ah, fuck, I didn't
Ah.
DI. I didn't have DI. That's so unlucky. My song's about to end too. My buff is going bye-bye. It's only fire. I'm fighting anyone. Oh, I tried to DI.
Alright, well. Ooh, nice. Ooh. Now you gonna do it? Are you gonna do it? Yeah.
I'm killer. Sit down and shut up. They got CA2 now though, and I'm all out of meter. I'm all out of meter. Ooh,
Alright,
nice.
have a good night,
Fucking
Mel.
hit grab. 5 medals too. Nice grab. Oh, I tried to do my reversal. This is it for me. I'm already fucking losing all this health. Oh, it's over. I hit a button. It's over. I'm done. This is the end. This is the fucking end of my fucking story, bro. My song just ended too.
It doesn't
fucking
count as a
over.
real loss because it wasn't the CA version.
Oh, you're right. That's a good boost for me.
Pro stopped playing Manon because she just kind of has losing matchups against the top 8 in this game at a really high level, and if you want to win, you just pick like Ken.
All it takes is one call out on Manon, and she loses like half her health.
Yeah.
You go for the grab, but they jump, and that's just a shit ton of damage. There's a punish counter, and they get Oki, and
Tons of
Kinda
other
fucking
characters
dope.
have stronger neutral and stronger like corner carry and stronger everything. Meanwhile, at a certain point, Manon just has to keep throwing you, and that's really obvious. Because once you get to around 4 or 5 medals, not a single combo she can do competes with just throwing you. That
was a good map though, or match though. GG.
It was a good
I had a
match.
lot of fun there.
Yeah. She's not the worst character in the game, but when you're dealing with specifically the best characters, yeah, you just gotta pick the better characters. Adam just put out a video about it explicitly. Here's a link to it. Her drive rush is not great, and
Who's next?
let me see.
Oh, Danny and Hannah. This is the fucking finals run back. Danny's picking Ryu too? Oh my goodness.
I'm mad about that. I installed Luke mods.
Wait, actually, are we running you and Blasphemous though, or are we running Danny and Hannah? Like, we just run
Running
Danny
and Hannah.
They're already in. Fuck it. This is gonna be hype as fuck though. You can see more of Hannah's crazy ass fucking geef. Some of Danny's Ryu. I know Hannah was learning some Ryu, so Hannah might have some more matchup knowledge.
It's Ryu. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna... Whatever you say. You know, whatever you say. Playing already the crazy ass neutral.
Oh!
Ooh, the SPD! Hannah knows! Hannah knows! Danny, it might be fucking over for you, you fucking Nimrod. Oh my god, Danny. Come on, man!
Danny, what are you doing, dude? Danny!
Danny! This really is gonna be a fucking Kengan manga fan. Danny's gonna start losing. It's gonna be like, Hannah's got 2 matches on her. And fucking Danny's and Danny's like, that's it. I'm using my ultra instinct. He's just like going crazy. Here it is. Use slime rush. Oh my god, that grab. Oh, this song goes hard too, bro. Battle of Guild.
Oh, okay, you're listening to the Kengan soundtrack.
Yes, I am.
I'm listening to Geef's theme right now. It goes hard.
This shit goes crazy. Oh my god, the grab. Come on, Hannah, come on!
No!
No! It's 1-1. I feel like that's unsafe, but the spacing makes it safe.
Which one?
That big kick that Ryu does. Oh my god. See, Danny's really good at capitalizing on whiff buttons with drive rush.
If you want to know if
He'll see
something
a
is...
big ass whiff button and then drive rush in.
If you want to see if something is safe, you can turn on the option that makes it so that it displays move data as
I
it is.
have it on. I haven't been looking. Oh my god, Danny's so fucking good at blocking this shit. Hannah's having trouble catching them out.
Oh!
Oh,
That's
bro.
so stupid.
This is the Twitter. That's the Twitter video right there. That's the Twitter clip.
That match was stolen. That match was stolen.
That was just stolen. Danny's a fraud for that.
Danny is a fraud.
It's not even Danny's fault.
Oh.
Right through the.
Oh, wait, hold on.
God.
I'm gonna give
Hold on. Hannah's got the comeback.
Might have given Danny the score too
really
early.
Is
Hold
like
on.
Sekibayashi.
Never mind.
Oh my god, I'm taking off my glasses.
Because anti-airs in this game don't work. They don't have a hitbox behind you at all, so anything that advances you forward won't catch someone directly above you.
Which I think sounds bullshit for
It's
Eve. I feel like
stupid.
Eve should have a bit more lenience, because that's my issue with also hitting my DPs. Blasphemous kept jumping over me, and I do it right when they're above my head. So Hannah's playing bit crazy here, hitting the buttons, testing things out. Oh, and he can't counter that DI. What the hell was that, Danny? Danny Denton charge. Right next. Oh, counter DI.
It's not a bug. It's intentional. It's consistent across the cast. But for example,
Yeah, everyone's got it.
this is the hitbox for that
Nice
move.
DI.
If it isn't directly in front of you, it will not be grabbed.
You have to preemptively see the jump coming or something, or like they're far enough or some
Yeah.
shit. Or if they neutral jump.
Most things that can anti-air won't do it on neutral jump pretty much. At least if it's like a super.
Oh my god, Danny, come on, bro! Here's the thing. I'm still rooting for Hannah, because once they get into losers, I already know this run back gonna be crazy. Oh man, this song goes so fucking hard. It's got the craziest English you'd ever hear. Oh my fucking god. Hannah's a fucking beast. Danny's gonna get fucking smoked now. It's fucking over. No! Oh. Danny saw it coming. Danny had to read. See,
Playing
Danny
Ryu's
is
theme.
polished up. Run back city.
No.
We gotta play Run Back City on the last fucking round. Last match.
Ooh, nice.
That was very good. Danny just keeps walking back, walking back forward, baiting a button or something. He knows when to block right away, dude.
He's really
Reactions
good
are
at like
crazy.
moving back without losing space, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, exactly. He moves back enough for you to like do something. Oh my god, that perfect parry, that's what I like to see. But Danny has those live fucking reversals.
I'm not eating chips too loudly into the microphone. I see my mic like activating, but
Is it not counting? It's not,
Round 2. Fight.
oh,
Oh, the counter DI. That's not unsafe? He needs it, I guess. Oh my god. Does this kill though?
Statistically speaking, I don't think Geef has a single matchup that is advantageous for him.
Yeah.
But that's what makes seeing a Geef so much better.
Oh,
Especially a good Geef. Hannah is really good at Geef.
Hannah is a very, very good Geef. The best Geef I've seen so far. That's why Keith needs to get his ass in here and lab against Hannah. Where's his ass right now? Playing fucking Valorant? Let me check.
You would know better than I would, Hannah. Does Geef have a matchup that would be considered anything other than 5-5 or lower? Because I don't think I know of one off the top of my head. Does he have winning matchups? I guess Marisa would be one of them, but I feel like Marisa's more even, it's just you have to play right.
Next.
I think next might be me.
Oh, you and Blasphemous, yeah.
I gotta put away the sun chips. I gotta put away the sun chips.
That was a good match, though. That was good.
That was a really good match.
I already know right now. Fucking Hannah's coming back, or whoever wins. I don't know. I'm rooting for Hannah. I want to see the run back. I want Hannah to take one off of Danny.
Does
Danny and Hannah need to lab together. That's what needs to happen. I want to see them get.
he win
strong.
against Manon? Okay, let me set this up. Huh.
Here comes a new challenger.
Boom, 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 boom. I have to send a link to Keith to watch the tournament. This guy can't look at announcements. He's gonna hear it right now on stream too. Keith! Go! He's superior in many aspects. It's prefer to approach him, and the risk reward on her mix-ups is in his favor. My unranked Manon is a whopping 85. Damn! Manon is ass! Oh, should we got Dawson and Marissa? This is actually weird. The team's pretty even so far, though. I don't think they got the matchup knowledge against Dawson. Oh my god. Still getting the download, don't matter. I think this matchup might be really hard for Marissa just because a lot of their attacks stop Marissa from doing things. But as soon as Marissa gets in, it's kind of over for fucking Dawson. I don't know what the fuck. Oh my god, what the fuck was that? That was lag. That was lag, bro. Inferno. Ooh, nice call out on the teleport. And they're dead. That was really good right there. That is, Hannah is built different. That was a good Gladius into the corner. It's gonna be hard for Dawson to get out of this. Nice command grab. Super, does this hit? Oh my god, it works. Motherfucker, is that one hair guy in fucking Kengan now? That's crazy, yo. Ooh. Yoga. Very nice. Baiting out the teleport. That's maybe this matchup isn't that bad. You can just fucking down heavy punch. I think that's what it is. What's the next character? What's the next character? I gotta listen to Animal Fighting again. That song is so good. Bro, Keith, are you watching this stream yet, bro? Type in chat right damn now. I swear to God.
I go for ain't even eating that damn cheese.
You fucking go for stop eating the damn cheese and let me hear you in here, man. I'm sorry for being a little aggressive. This is Lily too, though. What the hell? Oh my god. Wait, Blasphemous got that fucking smoke. I have not seen Lily play like this before. Does Lily have less health or something? Or is that just normal Marissa?
That's just normal Marissa damage.
God damn, bro.
I think Lily's health is the same as most characters. No character has less, some just have more.
Yeah, some just have more. Okay, that makes sense. Until Akuma comes out.
And until Akuma comes out, he's gonna have less.
I hope he has less. I want busted ass character. I want chip ass character. Ooh, whiff the grab. They're really getting them grabs off really good though. Ooh, that chip ain't gonna do too much. Yeah, it's gone. Lily was a bad pick.
Oh wait, this would be 2-0 now. Yeah.
Yeah, 2-0. Well, not a bad pick. It was random. Not your choice.
Bad random pick. Random could have picked better.
Random could have picked better there. Random's kind of throwing Blasphemous under the bus here.
No!
Why are you screaming no? What the hell? You scared me.
Blanca!
Blanca! I didn't see you until now. You just screamed no, and I was like, what the fuck happened? Oh my god. Just learned some grave news. I gotta post this song in the fucking server, bro. This song is so good. God damn. You're just fighting that. You're in that Blanca knowledge right now. The instruments, the tools here. Ooh, that was a good DI. What the hell? And then the command grab. And another command grab. These throw loops are crazy. Very good confirmed. Another one. DP, reversal, and a deep. What? pressure on, hitting buttons. Gonna be real low on health. Gonna be in burnout though. Alonso. Ooh, took advantage of it. They got
Bro,
the
the
combo,
anti-air DI? That is not real. I fucked that
That
shit
is
up.
real.
That is so fake. I can't believe that just happened to
You
me.
just got fucking bomboed. Blanca bomb. That didn't do a lot of damage though, because I think there's often there's drive cancels in it.
Woo!
Ooh my god. Is that it?
That's
That's
it.
it. That's it.
That was a really good
GG,
match.
Blasphemous.
Yeah.
Get down here with me.
Two bad characters to get randomed into because I was looking into how to fight Lily and also Lainey fights Lily.
You trying to fight Lily?
Yeah.
As Lainey does?
Yeah, well, also because
That's
Lily is
fucked up.
weird. She's like, she can catch you out the same way Blanca can. Where it's like, I don't know what the hell you do, right?
Oh, Blasphemous is doing the mirror matches next time.
Mirror match is gonna be so funny.
Then I'll just stick with JP. Maybe. Yeah, I feel like your JP is really good. You should stick with that after the mirror stuff.
I don't want.
What do you mean? What are you saying?
I was gonna say, I don't want to see this Chaluk. I mean, I want to see this Chaluk from Danny.
Chaluk? What
Chaluk.
the fuck is Chaluk?
Chaluk, that's his name.
You're confusing my ass.
You don't get it. You would understand it.
I don't understand. So wait, what's next then?
Next is, I'm just fixing the bracket really quick here.
Oh yeah, you didn't update that. So Hannah and fucking Smiley Missly.
Unfortunately.
What do you mean unfortunately?
Not yet, bro. What's up, bro? What is up, bro?
Is that key?
That's key.
That's what
key.
I fucking thought. That's what I fucking thought. I've been telling your ass to talk in chat this whole time and you haven't. He best have the sound on. I swear to God, he doesn't have sound on. Cause what is he playing right now?
Guy on that XIV.
Of course he is. Nah, cause I'd be he on the commentary. All you'd be saying is, nah, but the go breach the cheese on this matchup. Hannah, perfect parry, bro. That's what I like to see. Holy fuck, man. Hannah's so good. Hannah knows what to do in this matchup now. They got the download without even fighting another Marissa.
What?
Keith, are you taking notes right now?
Dude, that was like a cross counter from a fucking like.
Yes, it was.
Martial
And
arts
that was
anime. That was nuts.
Yeah, that was just a fucking. That was Hajime no Ippo. The fucking. They both punch each other at the same time. Naruto versus Sasuke type shit.
I shouldn't have jumped back.
How was Hannah just thinking about this matchup, and that's why they lost to Danny? They're thinking about this matchup specifically right now. The whole time. Keith is flabbergasted right now. That's fucking.
Ah! That's a punish counter too. That's the part that sucks.
It does a lot of fucking damage. What the fuck?
That's the first
Not
not hitting.
level 3.
Ah.
Hannah's in a tight spot here in Burnout as Zhang Yi, but still putting on the pressure. That's so unfortunate. This is gonna hurt. Hannah's still keeping the defense. Creating space. Ooh. Both being real safe here. One touch right now. Testing buttons. Ooh! Oh, Hannah was so close. I feel like that might have been a misinput. I don't know what that was. Either way. God damn. Back into the corner with Geef. Ooh, the command grab, it's gone. Yeah, that's it. Perfect KO.
Is that 1-0 or
Had
did
the momentum.
Hannah win a match? I don't remember.
Hannah, do you remember?
Oh, show up. It's 1-0.
Oh, okay. That was yeah, y'all were just in the group. I'll try to remember. Hannah trying to put in the pressure, but Smeely Missly getting over here with the fucking jumps. Yeah, they're both playing really safe here. Ooh, jump in the grab. Saw it coming from a mile away. Long time Mika player. The long time Mika player versus the long time Seth player. I cannot believe this shit. They're both gonna have to wait 5 seasons to get their characters. Oh my god. Come on, Hannah. You fucking got this. Don't let this be the end. Yes! Yes! Jump ins. Ooh, with the. Oh, try to grab twice.
Why didn't that punish
just
counter?
out of range, and then the punish counter on that one. I think it was just out of whatever.
What the fuck? What the hell?
What the fuck is going on here? These weird stuff going on. Ah, kills. Fuck. That's 2-0. Pretend you're also. Do you want me to like talk like you, Keith? Holy fuck, guys! The Gopher eat the cheese on this one. He fucking lost. See, if I was there, I would have won. Like we are commentating together. Well, then you're gonna have to talk in chat too. Am I talking to no one? I like I'm crazy. Like, oh, Keith, you're so right, bro. That fucking is so crazy. Oh my god, did you see that, Keith? That was fucking insane! With the grab. You're right about the blue lobster on that one, Keith. Oh my god, the blue lobster grab.
What does that mean?
The blue lobster. You don't know what the blue lobster
I know with the
Keith?
blue lobster, I just don't know what that has to do with...
Explain the blue lobster. Explain the blue lobster right now, Keith. Teach them the blue. The blue lobster, that's what I'm talking about. The blue lobster grab. And there is the fucking gopher grab. Oh my god. And then the counter? That's some bullshit.
the blue lobster grab isn't anything, they're lying.
What are you talking about? It's real to us.
I dashed every time into it. God damn it.
Oh my god. Hannah's got that download on your fucking dumbass. Y'all won't know yet, but see, if Keith was here in
What?
boys,
That has that range?
that reach! You're fucking dead! You're fucking dead! There's no way you're not dead, right?
What? How did that grab me?
That is what happens when the gopher eats the cheese. For sure. That's what
I did not know
talking
level
about.
3 had that range. Jesus
The range
Christ.
is crazy on it. That's what I'm talking about. Gopher ate the cheese like Popeye eats the spinach. Oh my god, wait, what the fuck? Hannah's getting the fucking gopher buff.
We're on layer 2 now.
Ooh. Punish counter. Or counter here, I don't even know what it was. Hold on, I'm looking.
Where's the punish counter?
Okay. Oh, that was a bit of a big bundle press there. This hurts, but don't kill. And they're burnout. Against Zangief, this is a round steal it. Oh, fucking jabbing the button. Playing too much Strive. Jabbing fucking punch on wake up. Ooh. Take it. Ooh, tried to call out a jump, but fucking missed. Oh, this is gonna fucking hurt. And they got no meter now. God damn! Marissa needs it though. Fuck. Trying to take up space, get out of the corner with the grab. Okay though, it's all good.
I'm beating my chest like a fucking gorilla. I'm Marisa in real life right now.
Holy fuck, man. We should play Leo and Strive then, if you like beating your chest like a fucking gorilla.
That was a really good match. Holy shit.
God damn. Hannah's out. Now you get to beat Danny. Those are really good.
That was the match I was dreading the most. Cause like, finals, bro, I'm getting washed against Danny. I'll put up my best, but I'm getting washed against Danny.
No, you got it. You got it. You beat Danny before. You could do it now.
Okay, theoretically. Look, I believe in
Do
myself.
it now.
I believe in myself. Hold on a second.
You put on your own jams. Put on some music right now.
I got you. I got you. I got you. I got you.
I gotta mute my own now, then. Actually, what? Because if I hear it, I'm gonna hear myself in the stream. What song are we playing?
I don't know yet. I don't know yet. Alright, I'm thinking...
Play Weight of My Pride. Weight of My Pride, but it goes so hard.
I don't know what that is. I'm not. I don't. You gotta play.
Don't
talk
play it right
real
now.
songs.
That might be copyrighted. But I'll show you later. Weight of My Pride is a Hajime no Ippo song. That song is so fucking hype. Yeah, next tournament, Hannah's coming back with the craziest knowledge of the Marissa matchup, and you'll be fucking finished. You'll just be done.
I got it. I got it.
For that 7 train that surprised you, it didn't have the range, but you pressed a button that moves your collision box forward, moving into its range.
Huh,
Did you hit
okay.
a button doing that?
I don't remember hitting a button, but I believe that.
Yeah, that would make sense. That would make sense why I did that. What song are you playing on it?
Twister from fucking Bones of You Neo. Any heavy kick? That's probably true. I'll have to look back at the replay.
Oh my god, already playing Mad Save. This is a really... We're both trying to get that dub. Danny playing safe too, backing off. Oh, with the DI! Getting caught up on the DIs again. Nice. That's a good charge there. Oof. EXDP breaks the armor on it. Engine charge. You're doing all these neutral jumps. Oh my god, this motherfucker's a rabbit!
He got my ass. He knew I wasn't gonna challenge that because I'm like not thinking. Hold on. It's fine, it's fine.
You got it this time. You got it. Start reacting. Start doing things.
Ah, wrong button. Actually, that was the wrong button entirely.
Yeah, you were too low to use armor. Oh, let's go. Let's see it. Yeah, they're just gonna EXDP it now. I didn't think that beat it.
It does.
Nice Tatsumaki carry. Rise, kneel, corner carry. Getting the health bar about equal now.
Oh, why did I drive rush?
Destin with Hadokens. Destin with Hadokens. Yeah, watch out with hitting the back forward with parrying. This hurts really bad. Or kills, one or the other. Yeah, I don't kill, but it hurts. Oh my god, oh my god.
No, he didn't DP, he didn't DP.
And he got the cheat box to fucking spam out them fireballs. He got modern controls on. Nice kick. Ooh. Trying to chip them out.
I actually could have killed.
Ooh, that
I-
was a really good drive.
That was a
rush.
round-ending drive rush, and I didn't do it.
It's okay, it's okay.
That's
Next time,
fine.
next time.
The fact that I hit it at all is good. I just fucked up the second half.
That was a really good play.
Nice
right
throw.
there. Yeah, that was good. You did good there.
I gotta cut the music a little bit. That's what it is.
My impatient ass would have pressed that button twice there in that unsafe stuff. Sorry to say, chat room. I'm sorry, chat room, but it kills. Sorry, chat room, but the gopher eat the cheese this time. Oh my god, these combos. Danny's just keeping the pressure. Even while backing up, Danny still has that pressure on him. Just jumping, testing shit. God damn! Danny's got so few openings in the corner. When Danny gets you in the corner, he's got you stuck there. Ooh, try to DI it. Not work. EXDP. He wastes a lot of DI on it though. I don't know if it's worth it. Very good command grab. Try to do the fucking launcher. Ooh. Danny plays it safe and just blocks. Ooh. Oh my god. Danny's a fucking player. A real G. This is gonna hurt. Or not, Danny got fucked up there. Carrying them fireballs, not get burnt out. It's okay, it's okay. Get that drive in the back.
Not dead.
Is that this?
That's dead.
It's CA, yeah, that's dead. Bye-bye. Damn, that was so close though. You're getting the download. I feel it. Keith's over here cheering on his childhood friend. I gotta be neutral about this. I'm not. I don't fucking cheer for Meg. Fuck Danny. Fuck you, Danny. If you're in this. Yeah, let's fucking get it. How about you? Charge. Ooh. Danny always hitting some safe ass buttons, bro. And then getting confirms off of it. Any damage is good damage, I guess. Damn. Block. Aries.
Yeah, the
Oh my
game.
fucking
I don't get my air invulnerability or my projectile vulnerability on my DP until like frame 5 or something, so I just got killed by a fireball.
That's unfortunate. That's a good jab. Danny just hitting that medium punch. That's heavy kick. That's what that is. Yeah, that's heavy kick. My bad. I should start like a Street Fighter player. That was fierce. Actually, no, fierce punch. My bad. I'm not a real fan. How the fuck is that motherfucker?
Jab?
Like that motherfucker? Yeah, that motherfucker's safe. That motherfucker is safe.
Okay, well that's it. That's the tournament. It's over.
That's it.
What?
It's over.
That's
It's
plus.
over.
Okay.
You got hit by the most plus move in the fucking game. Like +1.
My bad. I didn't realize. I didn't realize this motherfucker had the burnout combo jabs.
Oh wait, yeah, you were in burnout, so it was +1 because of that.
That was just plus. Yeah, I wasn't in burnout. I couldn't have. Actually, I could have pressed. I could have pressed if I was thinking. There was something I could have done. I could have just armored it, but I didn't consider it.
True.
But yeah.
This was a good tournament. I had fun. I don't know if I had fun because I was like fucking about and like screaming, but I had fun. Really good tournament.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a good last match. I will eventually be good enough to deal with that, but I don't know. It's Ryu, right? I see Ryu and I'm like, oh come on, it's Ryu, and then it's like, oh,
But he's got sauce.
He's
You
got
can't
sauce in
underestimate
this
the man
game.
with the sauce. He's the sauce master.
what are the sauce Rissians? I don't know what that means.
You gotta lab some more. I bet. Okay, here's the thing. if you want to play Street Fighter 6, you can just ping Danny in the server, and Danny will be like, okay, I'll play Street Fighter 6. Right, Danny?
No, Danny. I said, Danny, you want to play Street Fighter 6? And he was like, against your Marissa? Get the hell out of here. I was like, okay.
That is not what Danny said.
He did, dude. It was nuts.
That's something Keith would say. He'd be like, I'm fucking playing Valorant. Fuck off. And that's what Keith would say to me. Yeah, Danny, I know Danny, if I ping him whenever I want, you know, he'll join in like a couple minutes if he's not busy. Fucking, if I'm not at work, I'll probably join if I'm not playing like World of Horror or something.
Man, that's all you ever be doing, playing World of Horror.
Because I'd be fucking bored all day, bro. I don't know what I'm doing all day. I wake up, put my eye drops in like an old man, and then I sit there and watch YouTube, check Twitter for a little bit, see what's going on with season 3. That's all I do. He thought of himself as Joey Wheeler and Danny as Yugi Moto. Brute Force Box has logistics.
Alright, hold on. I was just setting this up. Don't worry about there being 2 Wills. Wait, why does it show you playing Blanca? It was so fucked up because all the different characters you played. It had no idea what to display, so it went with Blanca. What do you want me to change it to? Because it has to be at least one of the characters.
Let's go Puerto Rico! Let's go! Were we doing that
The random tournament?
Yeah.
Now that it's actually time, like it's like the end of the week, I'm thinking sometime mid next week. I think I said Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. I should be good for Wednesday.
Because I really want to do a random Fightcade tournament where each match is a completely random game. I already have the wheel set up. I have all the games picked. I won't tell you what game your set's going to be until your set happens, though.
Yeah.
You don't get a chance to lab, and it's not going to be games that you're going to have any prior knowledge of, probably.
Unless it's like, I mean, me and you do, and probably
yeah.
Keith.
I mean,
Keith has some Rumblefish. I'll say that.
Keith ain't got no Rumblefish.
Keith got some Rumblefish. Keith, you got Rumblefish? You got some
no
Rumblefish in you?
If Blasphemous doesn't say what they want me to change it to, I'll just set it to be like JP.
Would you play bit or post tourney? Danny, you want to play post tourney? What's it? Keith, you told me to buy Rumblefish. We were both hyped for Rumblefish 2. Remember?
The fun of match they played was Blanca. I'll just keep it like that.
Yeah, see, Danny's ready for some post tourney. You don't remember it? Okay, I'm gonna. You're gonna play Jamie? Danny, how are you liking Jamie? You keep switching back to Jamie. Let's see it.
I guess
I'm
Hana versus
posting
regular
general.
box. Here. Yeah.
Um.
Well, the top 8.
So yeah, well, Hana and